Greetings, brothers and sisters. I have a bunch of stuff to get to today. Like, just stuff is building up. I don't know whether I'll be able to cover everything. I got all these tabs open with apocalyptic news. But I was up last night. I woke up around 2. And that's when I have some of my best meditations. And the idea came to me to make this video with this central question, and it's something for everybody to ask. And I've talked about this before, but this is going to be a much more extensive, coverage of this. Why should the human race survive? Like, why should we, as a species, keep on going, right? Why should we be allowed to continue as a race? If you think about, like, all the creatures in the world, that are, in a state of constantly making their case to continue being a part of this system, being a part of the universal system and the planetary system. Like, raccoons and mice and, eagles and, octopuses or whatever it is. Like, what are we contributing as a species? What's our purpose? How are we, playing a part in the system, right? In the creation, the divine creation, to God and the higher developed beings that are in charge of this planet. Even individually, how am I as a person contributing something? What am I doing to make the world a better place? What am I doing to contribute to the planetary system as a whole, to the human race, to God's creation, to the divine creation? How am I playing some part? How can I justify my existence? How could I justify the existence of human beings as a whole? Like, what are we doing to contribute? Like, if you think about it, we're the apex predator. We're the, number one most evolved creature on the planet. Our brains, our capacity for reason, our, opposable thumbs, our technology, our ability to, affect the planet is more than any other species. Human beings are affecting the planet more than, all the other species combined. And most of that effect, I would say all of that effect, at least in terms of the collective, is a negative one. And if you look at every other species, they have a purpose. They do something, right? So all the predators, all the snakes, all the, the birds of prey, the kestrel being maybe the number one, but all of them, they help keep the rodent population down. You have all these rodents, right, that are, there's, I think, 1/4 of the mammal population is some form of mice or rat or whatever it is. So all the creatures that hunt those types of animals are helping to keep this population from exploding, right? So they form a purpose. But those rodents themselves, they help aerate the soil. All these creatures, prairie dogs and, moles and things like this, they keep the soil from getting too compact, right? Of course, we know trees produce oxygen and are, a purification system for the air. They provide shade. They also provide topsoil, in terms of the decaying leaves and things. So they do so many different things, trees and plant life, right? They're food for so many different creatures, homes for creatures and things like this. And so, trees and forests and, jungles and things like this all contribute in multiple ways. And then you have creatures like cows and, whatever it is, elephants and, big creatures that eat grass and, poop out high quality fertilizer. That is, even when they urinate, all this nitrogen that they provide. And so they actually make the soil better, right? These creatures who, graze and, turn that food and vegetation into good quality topsoil. And then you have bees and hummingbirds and all these pollinators, so many creatures that pollinate flowers and pollinate, all of this plant life, right, which is so important. And then all these creatures are food, right? You have, all these creatures die and they're eaten in one way or another. They're consumed by other creatures or bacteria and things, and they break down into the topsoil as well, right? You have all these, like salmon, for example, like these salmon coming, the salmon are born in a creek and then they make their way to streams and rivers and then eventually back out to the ocean and they swim around the world, and there are actually food there for various creatures, and they come back home to their creeks and lay eggs, and they're eaten by bears and other creatures, and they are dragged off into the forest, around the areas where they die and things, and they, are high, they're rich in nitrogen and all these things that help the forest grow. I mean, they serve, all these creatures have a purpose, right? I mean, in the oceans, and then you have creatures like vultures and, things that, opossums and things that eat dead creatures, keep the bacteria down. I mean, they're like nature's cleanup service. Nature's cleanup crew. And so if you think about every creature, every animal, everything on the planet, it has a purpose except for us, right? It has a way to contribute except for the human species, which is, we're just takers, right? And you think about, like, what's your personal goal? What's the goal of the collective humanity? What's the government's goal? What's the United States government's goal? Our fundamental primary reason for existence. Why are we here? And not in some selfish way, because most of it's about taking and being selfish. Most of it's about enjoying our lives and being, happy, right? The pursuit of happiness. And the pursuit of happiness for most Americans doesn't involve in giving back in any way. It's about taking in some way or another, having more, like having more stuff, having more land, having more pleasure, having more things, right? All these ways that, human beings exist, right? Our biggest claim to fame is that we produce garbage, pollution, toxic waste, nuclear waste. I mean, think about all the ways that we've created all these ways that we're screwing up the environment for the rest of the creatures on this planet. Like, you can go down the list. I can probably think of all of them. Electromagnetic frequency poisoning, Wi-Fi. I mean, messing up even on an invisible energetic level. Electricity pumping through the thing, pumping oil up, right? All the things that are done with oil, like plastic bags, taking 10,000 years and more to break down plastics that enter into the environment, like just to carry our shit, like just to, buy stuff at a store and put it in a plastic bag. There's this island, this ocean island of plastics that have just gathered in the Pacific Ocean. It's just this place where all the plastic ends up in little particles, like not big plastic bags. Of course, you have these plastic bags floating around that turtles are eating and things like this, right? These creatures, turtles think it's they're jellyfish, things that they eat. And so you have all these ways that we're creating some sort of pollution. When I was in Sri Lanka with my family, and they had a lot of pollution, like just bad pollution there, in terms of, like, they didn't have much environmental control, even though it's a place where people vacation. It's like, where Cuba is to India, to America, to Florida, in India, right? So in its relationship, Sri Lanka is a small island off the, southern tip of India. And it's got a mountain, with elephants and, beautiful stuff. Like, it's a beautiful place, in terms of its environment. And then it has nice oceans, places that could be, like a paradise. But the pollution there is so bad. My family and I used to swim in the ocean, and some days it would be okay. But there was days there would be so much plastic, and the plastic bags would all, like, group together, and you'd be swimming, and they'd wrap around your leg like you were being dragged down by an octopus, and it felt really gross because they were slimy and, And so you think about, like, all the things that we just make, like, we're carrying stuff in this plastic, using plastic to carry stuff or store stuff, and then it goes into the environment and just, never comes back out, right? And it affects all these other creatures. And these cities, these giant cities that we've built, where we, the environmental impact, I mean, they do environmental impact studies in terms of all the other creatures that suffer and the trees themselves and, the environment, to build a giant city. And then in those cities, we have human waste, and then we have our garbage, and then we have our pollution that are all being created in these cities, making the world a worse place on every level for all these other creatures around the globe, right? Negatively affecting the environment infecting and affecting the environment with our pursuit of happiness, with our, taking. We're just taking resources all over the place. And then, turning those resources into toxic waste and then dumping it out in the environment. People say, well, global warming is a lie, all these things. Well, yeah, but we're affecting the world, right? I mean, it's a scam. The CO2 emissions is a scam, right? And the people with money that want to profit off of it or, change the world for everybody else, they're the biggest emitters of CO2 and whatever else, pollutions and things. But we're just screwing up the world. And then there's the spiritual aspect. I talk about this with the Heartfulness meditation all the time. On a psychological level, on a vibrational level, on a spiritual level, we're emitting like crazy stuff out of ourselves all the time. Hostile vibrations, negative vibrations, negative energy, all this stuff. Bad feelings and things like this. And so there's the spiritual toxins we're producing as well. So if you think about, what are we doing? Like, what can we say that we're producing? Like, why should we still exist as a species, right? Like, what are we doing to contribute? What can we say to God? Like, this is what our purpose is. This is why we're here. This is what we're contributing. We have the most advantages of any creature, right? We have the ability to do so many more things than any other creature on the earth, and all of them contribute. In terms of human beings, either we burn our bodies or our bodies are buried in these boxes, so our bodies don't really even, decompose and help the soil, right? So human beings don't really, for the most part, and even if we do, we're so filled with, chemicals and toxins and poisons, and grossness that our bodies, decaying into the, we're adding to the toxicity of the earth and whatever it might be, right? And so in terms of our human waste, which could be like, you have, like all waste can be, a good thing when, creatures defecate out, and they poop. Their poop can be, turned into topsoil and things. But ours goes into sewers or septic systems with all these chemicals, shampoos and, people's detergents and bleach and ammonia, like all this stuff that goes into these toxic, little cesspits that each people have in there, either in a sewer, the form of a sewer that goes someplace, these cesspits, or your individual septic tanks that are filled with toxic chemicals and whatever it is, right? All the stuff that we produce that's unnatural, right? Chemicals and things that we create that are unnatural, that are toxic in some way. Like even in my yard, in my yard at home, we have chickens and we have cows. And the cows, we feed them a scoop of grain every day. And some of that grain is in their poop. So they defecate, these cow patties. And our chickens will want to eat those little bits of grain, so they'll scratch the poop into the ground. They disseminate it over a larger space and help it break down. And then that fertilizes the grass, which the cows eat and the chickens eat. Like they're actually, contributing to the environment one way or another, right? But people don't do that. We're not a part of the food system. We're not a part of the food chain. I mean, I guess there's microscopic creatures that inevitably will eat our bodies, begrudgingly, like we do everything in our power to keep that from happening. But really think about it. You can leave a comment. What do you think the human beings are doing? Like, what do you think we're contributing? I mean, in terms of our collective work, what are we doing to state our case? Oh yeah, you should keep us around. Like you should, we need to move forward in the evolutionary process, the spiritual evolutionary process. Because on the physical level, there's not a lot that you can claim that human beings are doing in terms of, just the amount of damage that we do, right? If you're going to offset the damage that we're doing to the world, right? The amount of resources that we're harvesting, the amount of, and because people say, oh, human beings aren't overpopulated. Well, look at what we're doing compared to every other creature in terms of screwing up the world, harvesting of resources. And you can see it. Go look at strip mines and the way that it, just ripping away trees and things. I used to, sometimes I watch that show Gold Rush, and they take this stuff called overburden, which is trees and topsoil and good things, right? And then they dig out all that stuff, all the, clay, all the, substrate, all the subsoil, And then they get down to pay dirt, which takes sometimes to 100 feet down, right? Just digging up all this stuff that has value so they can find gold so people, can wear gold stuff or, whatever people do with gold, right? To adorn their, selfish bodies because, there's a selfishness to the human species. So on a physical level, we could never offset the damage we're doing to the environment, to other creatures, right? And it's not our God-given right, this manifest destiny bullshit that, was put out there by the British kings and things like this to the past, that they had the God-given right? The queen has the sovereign's orb. That means that she's God's representative on earth, claiming it just by, military force and all these things, right? We don't have a God-given right to just suck up all the resources on this planet and shit out toxins, right? We're not, that's not what we were assigned to do. We have a purpose and we're supposed to serve. We're supposed to serve other creatures. We're supposed to serve each other. And most of all, we're supposed to serve God. That's, every creature has to serve divinity. Every creature has to serve the collective. And just the mental, I look at comments every day and the way that people think and just the stupidity and the selfishness and the narcissism and the myopic attitudes and things, right? And I'm not, saying I'm somehow greater and better because I'm not, right? I'm not pontificating I hope the rest of you get your shit together. It's not like that, Even in terms of the heartfulness system that I do, and I know a lot of other practitioners, and to me it's the solution, and it actually produces good things. It changes the energy, it uplifts the consciousness, the vibratory consciousness by having a spiritual goal, which is, what I understand to be the true purpose here on planet Earth, that your soul is here to evolve and get closer to God. And when you do that, you change the earth for the better. You make the world a better place. Babaji, the second master of the system, said, the very least you can do is leave the earth better than you found it. And so that's at the very least, that's a minimum goal as a human being. And, out of 8 billion people, how many people actually do that? What percentage? Less than 1% of the people leave the world better than they found it. Most people just, make the world a worse place on an emotional level, on a physical level, on a spiritual level. When they leave, it's worse, right? They actually had a negative impact on the planet. That's, human species right now. But through the heartfulness system, you can actually make the world a better place spiritually, and that can manifest physically or will manifest physically and in every possible way. A spiritual person that rises up to a higher level of being, right, a higher level of consciousness, pulls up the rest of humanity and the rest of the creatures as well. And so everybody, everything on planet Earth, when there's a saint, when there's a higher developed soul, is pulled up the, spiritual evolutionary construct, right? And so that's something that we can do that really other creatures can't, just to evolve and move closer to God and go farther along our spiritually evolutionary path. And then the capacity, the transmission that's given in the heartfulness system, the love that flows through people, the energy, the pranahuti, the utilization of the divine energy for the transformation of man, through the master of the system, of the heartfulness system, this energy, this God's love that, permeates the world. If you go to a spiritual gathering or one of the ashrams and you feel this love emanating out of the place, it just affects the environment. It affects the plant life. It just divinizes everything, right? And so that's the potential that human beings have. And I've experienced that. So I have a sense of, how people can actually divinize and raise up the, the vibratory fields of the planet and, make it into a more loving place and, make it into a more beautiful place, right? On every possible level through their spiritual advancement and serving God in this way, right? Serving the collective in this way. And so I've seen the full potential of human beings and how we could actually improve ourselves and, the planet and contribute something. And so I really know about that because I've done it. I'm into it. I love it, right? It's, my purpose, my goal here. And I give myself maybe C-, D+, right? I'm kind of a slacker. I'm okay, right? And I know lots of other people who do it and, they know, and maybe making the world a better place through when you meditate and these things, and the energy flows through you. I make these videos and I talk about it, and it affects people in a positive way. But it's I'm okay, right? I'm not some kind of superstar, like just a saintly giving person. Like I could do so much better. I mean, potentially. I mean, that's what human beings have is we have potential. We have the potential to serve. We have the potential to evolve. So that's the only case that can be made right now for the continuation of the human species, that we have potency. We have the potential to make the world a better place. And that potential is spiritual more than anything else. Like, and then our minds and then what we build in terms of cities and what we do in terms of collecting resources, in terms of the way that we live our material lives, we can make it so the environment is better, right? That we're just not like glomming stuff and sloughing it into our ghoul holes and just, slopping out toxic crap all over the place, garbage and toxic waste and, all the things, nuclear energy. And I mean, there's this stuff out there called depleted uranium, and I used to talk about all the time. It was something that was used in Fallujah. Remember when there was this insurgency? And again, it can't be really called an insurgency when you're invading somebody else's country. You have this when some superior force goes in and invades another country and takes their land and resources. The British and colonizing places all over the globe, and America doing it in Iraq and these other places, where we're harvesting oil or whatever it is, setting up infrastructure and whatever military occupation. They have it now, obviously, in Israel and Palestine, right, where the invading force, takes over control of some place and then calls the people who fight back, terrorists or whatever it might be, right, when they're just fighting for their land. And that happened in this place called Fallujah, and America was dropping, this illegal radioactive substance called depleted uranium. Whenever they make, whatever it is, nuclear waste out of nuclear power plants, there's this uranium that's been depleted. It's no longer has a, the kind of radioactive charge that can be used in the rods that, heat up the water in these nuclear power plants or whatever it is. So it's called depleted uranium, but it's still toxic and radioactive, and it can be used in bombs and all these things. Used in they can put it in shells, like big, shells for cannons or something like this, right? Like shells, like gun shells and things like this. They can put it in the metal. They also put it in rebar. They put it in building materials, and it has a 4 billion year radioactive half-life. So it's producing radioactive poison, stuff that will kill creatures and people, cause birth defects. It's horrible stuff. And it's there for 4 billion years. Like, it's going to be sucky. It's going to be poisonous for 4 billion years. Plastic barrels, I mean, they only last 10,000 years. Like, there's no way to store this stuff effectively. There's no 4 billion year container. And you have these scientists, who created this crap, the religion of science, and they don't have an answer of how to keep it safe from future creatures. And this stuff's just going to be sitting out there, and people will build homes, or creatures will build homes around it. It's just going to be in the dirt or wherever it might be, and they'll all be getting sick, and they'll have no idea why, right? It'll just be like this bad place, that just kills things, right? That's what human beings are producing. And so that's what hedonism and the pursuit of happiness has done. The warlike, the defending your property, all the things, right? We get to defend ourselves. We have the right to defend ourselves, right? And spend half of our budget, 60% of our budget, on weapons here in America and all these other countries, right? Not about defense, about invasion, about colonization. People on a, just a selfish way of living. Takers, right? You have a civilization, a species of takers. And so the only reason for us to continue or be allowed to continue, if we're making our case to God or the higher developed beings, is our spiritual potential and the few saints and higher developed souls that have made the world a better place because of the spiritual process I've talked about, and specifically in the Heartfulness system. And you have all these religions that people think, well, I'm religious and I go to church, or I go to the synagogue or mosque, and I, think about God once in a while and pray, and there's a system. I mean, the problem is that system's based in lies. I've talked about this idea, Jesus can't die for your sins. I mean, think about that. If you were hearing that for the first time, like you weren't brought up in it, right? Like if you were hearing that as an idea, how would that work? Like how would somebody else, especially somebody who died 2,000 years ago, be able to die for your sins, for your crap that you're going to do, for for your mistakes, your demonic creation that goes away from God, your selfish, egotistical things that you do, like all the things that you're doing right now. Somebody else could die for that. And why would you want that? Like, why would you want to inflict your spiritual grossness, your garbage, your mistakes on somebody else? Like, why would you think that's okay? Like, why would you think that would be a good, positive relationship, right? That you would be willing to dump all of your mistakes, all the things that you're doing wrong on somebody else, on some other person that you're supposed to love and, all these things. How would that work on a spiritual, scientific level? It doesn't work. It's impossible. It's impossible for someone else to die for your mistakes and your sins. It's impossible for someone else to bear the burden of those things. It's your burden to bear. So everything that you do is your responsibility. And that's why you're going to live life after life making the same mistakes because they've lied to you about this thing. The world religions in one way or another have said to the people, we'll take care of the spiritual part. You just go and indulge and enjoy and pay us money. Like that's your penance, right? You give us money and then we'll take care of you, make sure you go to the right place after you die. It's a false promise. Part of it is the religion's fault, but people, all over the world gravitate to this idea. They want to be able to indulge and not suffer the consequences. Even the Heartfulness system, you'll hear people say all the time, oh, Master will take care of it. This idea of the master of the system doing everything for everybody. Oh, no, we don't have to worry about that. Master will take care of it. The masters of the system, the Heartfulness system, have lamented this over and over again and said, you have to participate, right? We're giving you the ability to, earn your way in the spiritual field, and you have to choose to do that, and you have to access the abilities and the system at your disposal to do that. And they just still, no, you'll take care of it, right? I mean, even, after the master of the system says, no, you have to work. You have to, it's something you have to earn, right? People are like, oh, no, you'll do it, right? Even this most recent Zoom call with Kamlesh Patel Daji to the American mission, he was talking about how he wants to expand, that we need to expand the membership of Heartfulness. And he asked these people who had been assigned these positions, and they're, prominent people in the Heartfulness system that have done, various work in different roles. They said, what ideas do you guys have? And not one person spoke up and had an idea. Like I had bunches, right? Like I emailed a couple of voiceovers to the committee and him, right? I don't think, we'll see what happens with them. But no one had any ideas, right? And he even addressed this saying, everyone says, oh, the master knows everything. And he said, though the master of the system can know everything because of being in close proximity with God. And so if the master concentrates, if the master of the Heartfulness system concentrates, the answer will come, right? They'll be able to see whatever, right? So this is something that can be done, but it takes energy and concentration and, it takes human life force for these things. I do that here. That's how I get my answers here. I use the same process just on a lower level because I, ask God for the answers and God shows me. And so this is where, this information comes from. The difference is proximity. The master of the system is in the central region and is merged with God. And so there's also a cleaning aspect where their, individual egos and things have been minimized to such an extent that the answer will be clear. But he was saying to them, the master can know everything, but where's the fun in that, right? You have your role to play. And you have this passivity where people think spirituality is to be given, that God is just going to give it to you and that you don't have to earn it. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to, participate in your, own spiritual evolution. You have to earn something. You earn everything on life and planet Earth. Then how are you going to be just given something in terms of the spiritual world? Like you have to earn your way, and you have to do it by evolving and getting closer to God and doing something to make the world a better place, doing some service to God, performing some sort of task, right? You have an ability. Everyone has a gift. giving it like willingly, giving it, without any thought of, the self, right? That you just give and give and give, like God gives. And like, so many creatures around the world give, right? They give back, instead of this selfish pursuit of happiness and indulging in all these things. Doing some sort of work, not just for reward, not for compensation, not for, selfish reasons, but doing work that's going to give back in a way that, you're making the world a better place on a spiritual level, on a saintly level. And that is what the Heartfulness system is designed for. And so, in terms of the human species continuing here, it's whether people engage in this process. They now have a system that can help them become saints, and not just one person, not just, a handful of people, but in terms of like everybody on planet Earth can evolve to that level. Like that's what the Heartfulness system has been, sent down to planet Earth to do, right? And all these higher developed souls that were a part of religious movements in the past, Jesus and Krishna and all these, saints and like spiritual leaders like Swami Vivekananda, these various movements of the past. These souls are all involved in this latest movement. Some of them are even incarnating in and are in human form right now. Many of them are. And so you have like saints in this world that you've never seen before at one time, these collective higher developed souls. And then there's all these higher developed souls that are just, maybe they've never been a human being before, but they're like very high level developed beings that are all concentrating on planet Earth right now to give people a chance to rise up out of the, miasmas of their, whatever it's called, their indulgence, their selfishness, right? Their hedonism, and be more than that, right? Give back, like some level of giving back and divinizing themselves and rising up to a higher level of spiritual evolution. And then, people will be able to make a case, wow, we're actually contributing some way. We can go and be, bow before God and like actually feel good about what we've done here on planet Earth. Like when you die and your soul is evaluated for the work and what you've contributed to the planet, you're not like, yeah, I kind of, I was a complete, selfish piece of crap, right? Like that's, most people die with that, right? Then they go back up and they're like, yeah, I kind of failed. I didn't find my spiritual purpose and I didn't give anything back. I just took and, made the world a worse place. And so each of us like have to be evaluated. We're going to be evaluated, and we're being evaluated on a daily basis, right? Our soul is, doing the evaluation. Like our soul, has a plan for us, and it sees that our ego is going in the wrong direction, right? And then, when we die, we have the burden of all of our mistakes and impressions and indulgences that we have to pay for in a future existence, work off and, live in a way that we're not creating more spiritual grossness and negativity and making the world a worse place, and then collectively as a species. So it's a choice point because the opportunity is there for people to go up, but it seems like, a lot of people are just choosing to stay where they are, and really when they're doing that, they're going down, and my civilization's going in the wrong direction. More brokenness, more self-centeredness. People who are crazy, for the people who are mentally ill, for the most part, are very selfish, self-indulgent, right? They're still taking, they can't contribute anything, and they just, suck off the system more than anybody else. They're not even giving back into the system. They're not capable of working or doing anything for anybody or anything else, and they're just involved in their own victim consciousness and their own, mental illness and things like this. And so the broken people are even another level of this. They can't even contribute to the dysfunctional society. They can't even hold a job or, be a, parent or something like that and raise kids. They can't even, give back in that capacity. And so in a civilization of takers, you've got all these broken people that are taking more than everybody else. And so there's an opportunity here. There's a spiritual opportunity that is, and it's a choice point. There's this is where humanity has to get their shit together or be cut out like a cancer, right? We're a cancer right now on this planet, and be excised out and thrown on the, garbage pile, right? The evolutionary garbage pile, the garbage heap or whatever you call it, right? And be a failed species, and then, evolution and spiritual evolution will go in a different direction. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting for the Apocalaughs. and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.